Hiya too, how you doing? So it's Author Friday times again, and we are going to read today a book that I haven't read before. It's called The Moon Man, and it's by Tommy Ungerer. What do you think it might be about? Should we find out? On clear, starry nights, the Moon Man can be seen, curled up in his shimmering seat in space. Can you see him? Where is that? Can you see him when you look up at the moon? Oh. Every night, from his drifting sphere, the Moon Man was filled with envy as he watched the Earth people dance. If only once I could join in the fun, he thought. Life up here is such a bore. Do you know what envy means? Envy is when you really wish that you were doing what that person was doing. One night, a shooting star flashed by. The Moon Man leaped just in time to catch the fiery tail of the comet. Where's he going to go on the shooting star? The night creatures of the woods fled in terror at the loud crash of the fallen star. And you see, here it is. Do you know what fled means? Fled is where you've run away. The noise brought hundreds of people from a nearby town. Soldiers sped to defend the earth. Firemen hastened to quench the flaming light. The ice cream man hurried to set up his stand for the spectators. Got ice cream so that everybody could watch and get an ice cream. I love that. The firemen hastened to quench the flaming light. What does it mean, quench the flaming light? Do you know what you do? You quench your thirst, don't you? It means you have a drink to make yourself feel less thirsty. And obviously the flames are looking for that to put them out. When they reached the site of the crash, no one could decide what the pale, soft creature lying in the crater could be. Government officials were alerted. Statesmen, scientists and generals panicked. They called the mysterious visitor an invader. How do you think that would make him feel to be called an invader? Is he invading? Or is he visiting? The Moon Man was thrown in jail while a special court conducted a criminal investigation. Poor Moon Man. His hopes of dancing among the merry crowds and bright lanterns were crushed. Oh, but he's feeling really sad. All he wanted to do was dance and he's been put in prison. One night, as the Moon Man sat wondering why he was so cruelly treated, he noticed that his left side had faded. Why, I must be in my third quarter, he thought happily. Every night as the moon grew thinner and thinner, so did the Moon Man, until at last he was able to squeeze through the bars in the window. When the head of the armed forces paid a visit to inspect the weird captive, he found the cell empty. The general was furious. But they're thinking, how on earth did he get away? Days later, as the moon reappeared in its first quarter, the first quarter of the Moon Man came back. 2 weeks later, he had reached his full size again. Delighted with his freedom, he wandered about discovering the sweet-smelling flowers, the splendid birds and butterflies. He came upon a garden party where people in gorgeous costumes were dancing. Look, someone has come as the man in the moon, a lady cried. The Moon Man danced blissfully for hours. Blissfully means that he's so happy, more than happy. Alas, a grumpy killjoy complained of the late music to the police. Scared by the sight of the guns and the uniform, the Moon Man dashed off to a nearby woods. But he was spotted by the policeman, and a wild chase began. Swiftly outracing the police, the Moon Man shot across the countryside. In a lonely place, he came upon an ancient castle, the old castle. He was welcomed by a long-forgotten scientist, Dr. Bunsen van der Dunkel. For centuries, he'd been perfecting a spacecraft to reach the moon. Now finished, the intricate machine rested on its launch pad in a castle turret. Dr. Van Dunkel had grown too old and too fat to fit in the capsule. He asked his guest to be his first passenger. The Moon Man, who had realised that he could never live peacefully on this planet, agreed to go. How are they going to go to the moon when the moon is set? Let's see. Dr. Van Dunkel decided to wait for the moon to enter its third quarter. By then, the moon will have grown small enough to fit in the capsule, he thought. A few nights later, the Moon Man took leave of his benefactor. With tears in their eyes, they bade each other farewell. They said goodbye. Then the Moon Man blasted off with a roar of rockets. There he goes, shooting off into space. Look, he's crying there. Oh. Having succeeded in the launching of his spacecraft, Dr. Van Dunkel at last received the recognition he had so long deserved. He was elected chairman of an important scientific committee. He looks very happy to have that, doesn't he? And having satisfied his curiosity, the Moon Man never returned to Earth and remained ever after curled up in his shimmering seat in space. Looks like a happy little moon now, doesn't he? I wonder if you can spot the Moon Man when you next look up at the moon. I look forward to seeing your stories. See you later.